Hi everyone, and welcome to our next pre-recorded lesson for Year 4. This lesson is going to focus on Lesson 2. We're obviously in Block 6 and we're going to be focusing on non-verbal reasoning and mathematics. And we're very much looking forward to focusing on the second lesson with you and looking at what our content is. So if you are watching this, hopefully you're in Year 4 and you're looking for Lesson 2. Okay, let's go to the slides, make sure we know what we're covering off. So just a reminder, you should be in Year 4, this is Lesson 2, Block 6, and we're going to be looking at some non-verbal reasoning and also some mathematics. Here's the lesson plan, just in case you want to know exactly what the content is for this lesson. To practice mental arithmetic questions, that's the first thing we're going to be doing, and then be able to identify figures that are different from a group. And we call those type of questions odd one out, and we're looking forward to doing that with you. So we've got the mental arithmetic test, test 14. That will be the first thing we're going to be focusing on, and this will hopefully give you an opportunity to develop your mental arithmetic test skills, but also build hopefully on your results from last week. If you were able to get 15 out of 15, then hopefully you'll be able to achieve that again. But if you got slightly less, maybe just edging up and trying to get a few more questions right. We're then going to be looking at odd one out, and we're going to be focusing on how we approach those questions, reminding you of lots of tips and strategies, and then of course we'll practice some, and if there is an opportunity at the end, we will also go through the puzzles as well and just show you some of those extra activities you might like to do. So we're going to actually begin with the mental arithmetic test, just to let you know which one you need to grab. You've got lots of sheets at home, but you need to make sure, please, you've got test 14. Also making sure that you use the information which is on the side. So this just indicates that sometimes there will be some information down the side that you may well need to use. Remember, the boxes is where you actually need to record down the answers, so in these blank boxes. And then also looking at the grey, the numbers on the grey part of the sheet, those of course are your question numbers. So I think that hopefully makes it fairly straightforward. I'm going to bring up Billy now, just so he's there, so I can go through the questions with you clearly and you don't get distracted. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go through the questions for you, so you're able to access this test. When I call out the answers, I will read them twice, and then obviously I'd like you to write the answers in the boxes. So the first set of questions are going to be for 5 seconds, or you'll have 5 seconds to answer them. The second set, you'll actually have 10 seconds. So here we go. Number 1, write the number 7,081. 7,081. Question 2, what is the total of 8, 9 and 12? What is the total of 8, 9 and 12? Question 3. How many less than 77 is 36? How many less than 77 is 36? Question 4. Make the smallest number you can from 1, 5, 3 and 8. Question 4. Make the smallest number you can from 1, 5, 3 and 8. Question 5. Round 547 millilitres to the nearest 100 millilitres. Question 5. Round 547 millilitres to the nearest 100 millilitres. Question 6. What is the product of 9 and 7? What is the product of 9 and 7? Question 7. What is 130 divided by 10? What is 130 divided by 10? Question 8. Write the correct sign or symbol greater than or less than in the empty box. Write the correct sign or symbol greater than or less than in the empty box. Question 9. On your sheet is a scale. Write the number shown by the arrow. Question 10. Double 24. Double 24. Now for the next set of questions, you are going to have 10 seconds to work these out. So you do have a little bit longer. Question 11. David had 64 pence. He bought sweets costing 19 pence. How much did he have left? David had 64 pence. He bought sweets costing 19p. How much did he have left? Question 12. Sarah left school at 3:30 p.m. and got home 40 minutes later. What time did she get home? Question 13. Mum bought 4 cola drinks at 60p each. How much did she spend? Mum bought 4 cola drinks at 60 pence each. How much did she spend? Question 14. Write the next number in the sequence on your sheet. Question 14. Write the next number in the sequence on your sheet. And the last question, question 15. How much liquid is in the jug on your sheet? How much liquid is in the jug on your sheet? So guys, I hope you were able to follow those down through and you were able to answer all of those 15 questions. What we would recommend now is you can just pause the video, but we are going to reveal to you what those answers should have been so you can check these at home. Let's have a little look and see what the answers are. Those are the answers, so we can go down through. 7,081. Remember, when we add those numbers up, we get 29. I would have actually put the 8 and the 12 together to complement to 20 and then add the 9. Then we had to find the difference between 77 and 36. Notice they only gave you 36 this time, so you really had to listen to the questions carefully. Not quite so much information in this particular test. We had to make the smallest number. You might remember in last week's it was the biggest number, but it's the smallest that we can make. So we start with the smaller number and they gradually get bigger as they move to the right. For number 5, we had to round this to 100 millilitres, and of course it's 500 millilitres because we're below 50, so we're going to be going down. We're going to be rounding down. Number 6, hope you all know what the word product is. Now, if you didn't know what product meant in terms of mathematics, then we are talking about multiplying. So could be a good word for your word and meaning book, that one. Product means multiply, means times. So we're going to times 9 times 7, which is 63. Question 7, what is 130 divided by 10? Of course, that's 13. Then we need the greater than or the less than. Now we do need the less than symbol because 2,165 is less than 3,150. Hopefully you're accurate there. Number 9, we've got 7 tenths or 0.7. So whichever one you wrote, you can have the mark as long as you've put one of those. Question 10, we had to double 24, which is 48. Now, the longer questions, question 11, the difference between 64p and 19p is 45. There are different approaches for that one. You might have just done it as a subtraction method, or perhaps you might have taken, for example, 20 away, and then you would have got 44, but then you need to add one more back on because we're only taking 19 away to give you 45. So that might have been the approach that you took. 3:30, add 40 minutes, and the question was Sarah left school at 3:30, got home 40 minutes later. What time did she get home? Some of you, when you added that on, might have added on 30 minutes to take you to 4 o'clock and then added on another 10 minutes. But 4:10 is what you needed to have written as the answer. 13, we had to do 4 60s because we were trying to work out the costs of the 4 cola drinks. 4 6s, this is how I would have approached it, you would know is 24, but we're obviously dealing in money. Okay, so it will be £2.40. Question 14, we're looking at a number sequence, and you can probably clearly see that you're adding 3 more on each time. And it's important to see, of course, these are negative numbers, and we're adding on 3 more. So if we get to -2, the next number would be -1, then we'd get 0, and then, of course, we would get into the positive numbers. So if we're counting on 3 from -2, we go 1, 2, 3, added on 3, and of course we get 1. Last question, we're looking at the jug, and it's important that you look very carefully, of course, at this line, and also working out how much they go up. So what's the difference between each of the gaps? So we've got 250, and if we count the gaps, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means that each gap is worth 50 millilitres. So we need to have 1, 2, 3 of those gaps. So we're going to have to multiply that by 3. And of course that gives me 150. So the amount of liquid in the jug is 150 millilitres, as it shows you there. So well done if you got that correct. Well done if you managed to get all of those questions correct this week. If you didn't, don't worry, but maybe that's an area for you to focus on in your next lesson, or potentially work on at home as well. If there's an area you found a bit harder, if it was rounding or time or taking away money, adding money, that certainly is something you can concentrate on. Right, going along to the next activity. Now, we are going to be in your live lessons, of course, we are going to test you on your spellings, and that will be on your irregular plurals. Now, if you aren't able to come along to the live lessons, we would ask mums or dads to test you on those 10 words. Do let us know how you get on, but obviously these come from your weekly sheet. So, just having a little look at what those words were this week. They were irregular plurals, so you're focusing on these. So, hopefully you've done your spellings, written down the words, and this allows you the opportunity to just check them, make sure you've got them right. Right, let's have a little look at the main part of the lesson, and we've done the mental arithmetic test, and we're now going to be focusing on odd one out, and the objective is to be able to identify figures that are different from a group. Now, one of the main things we talked about in the previous lesson was that mnemonic to help you. So there it is again. Silly people always need soggy socks. And we've got rotten oranges smell. So that, hopefully, that mnemonic will help you in your lesson at home. If you are doing it at home, not doing the live lessons. And do refer to that mnemonic when you're answering the questions. Now, the book that you'll need is the Schofield and Sims Non-Verbal Reasoning book. And you'll need to please go to page 11. And it's really important when you do get to page 11, you're also reading through the information that you find on that particular page. So let's go and have a look and see what we've got at the top of page 11. I'm just going to read it down through and then we'll see what we've got to do. Odd one out questions are the opposite to similarities questions. Rather than looking for the one picture that is similar to all the others, you look for the one picture that is different. The odd one out. So we're finding common features. First, you need to find out what 4 of the pictures have in common. You can find then the one picture that does not have that feature. So strangely, even though we're finding the one that is different, we are actually finding similarities, a bit like we did last week. And hopefully this will leave us then with one that we don't require. Let's look at this example. We've got A through to E. And 4 of the pictures, very clearly you can see, are triangles, and only one is a circle. D is therefore the odd one out. So by putting A, B, C and E together, we're then left with the one that we don't require. Let's have a look at a couple of other examples. Now you can see already in here we've got to find the odd one out in the following groups. Well, we can see here that we've got B and we've got E as the answer. Well, why is it B? Well, of course, because the others are all bold, have a bold fill. So the answer, of course, is B. So if we were thinking about our mnemonic, what we're considering here is shading. Looking at this one, the arrows on A to D are all pointing towards the right, but this arrow is pointing towards the left. And if we think about our mnemonic, the shape hasn't changed, or the shading is exactly the same, but what has changed with that shape is the position. So do consider that mnemonic. The above examples have only one feature that is different. The picture below have a few differences. You have to ignore the differences and find the one thing that 4 of them have in common. So really interesting looking at this question. We've got lots of different shapes, but you will notice that inside the shapes we've got different types of shading. Well, we've got hatched shading in 4 of them, and then we've got a blank shape. So the answer has to be C, because A, B, D and E all have what we call hatched shading. Hatched shading, if I was to do an example, if I had a box here, if I was to do hatched shading, it would be like that. Now, of course, hatched shading can go in different directions. And when you go the other way, we actually call that cross-hatching. So hatching is something to look out for, and cross-hatching. Okay, let's move on and have a little look at the next part. And the next part we're going to look at is page 12 and 13. Now on page 12 and 13 we're going to ask you to look more carefully at some of the features and what they have in common. So we're going to be kind of ignoring differences. So having a look at page 12 and 13, write down next to the pictures the one thing that 4 of them have in common. Ignore any differences. So we'd encourage you now to look very, very carefully in your books and have a look and see what they have in common with each other, or what 4 of them have in common. And this hopefully then will leave you with one that is different. Now looking at question 1 here on page 12, you'll notice that A, C, D and E have what's called a checkered pattern. And I'm just going to write that word checkered. So they actually have a checkered pattern. Whereas if we look at B carefully, you'll see that that is actually plain. So if we were to put A, C, D and E together, this would mean then of course that B would be our odd one out. But first, we've got to ignore any differences and look at what they have in common. Number 2, we can see that A, B, D and E are made up of 2 lines. Whereas C, if you count them carefully, there's actually 3 there. So what have they got in common? You would put down they're made up of 2 lines. Whereas the one that we require as the answer has 3 lines. The little point here says some odd one out pictures have lots of differences. You must remember to look only for the similarities. Let's go down and have a little look at the next set. Now we can see what the answers are. We've got D here, got E on that one, and then on question 5 we've got D as the odd one out. So let's first of all focus on question 3. And again, what we'd be asking you to do is write down here why those other 4 are the same. So if we look at question 3, they all have a thick black outline. So they all have a thick, and that's the main difference, a thick black outline. But you'll notice on D, that's actually a thin outline. So the reason that D is the odd one out is because it's not thick like the other 4. Now it's a little bit difficult to make this out, but this actually is a square here. So what I think I'm going to do, I won't be completely accurate, but if I just draw a square here, draw a triangle here, it's easier of course to see, I'm sure, in your books, and also a square here. Now interestingly, when we look at arrows, we need to consider what they're doing and what they're pointing at. So all of the others apart from me have an arrow pointing, and that's really what arrows do, they indicate something, have an arrow pointing inside. Whereas with E, you'll see that the arrow is actually facing away from the shape. So the reason that's the odd one out is because the arrow here faces away from the shape rather than inwards. Question 5, we've got A, B, C, D and E. And what have they got all in common? Well, they are all, and there's a nice word here for you, which I'm sure you all know, or you hopefully have learnt from school already, and that is quadrilaterals. And what we mean by quadrilaterals is that they are all four-sided shapes. And quadrilaterals are things like kites, trapeziums, squares, triangles, parallelograms, rhombuses. However, D is a triangle, an isosceles triangle. So we would put those four together because they are all quadrilaterals. We're going to move on now to the next set of questions. And these questions are now for you to have a go at, and you might like to time yourselves. If you give yourself 30 seconds a question, and there are 6 on the page, you would therefore give yourself 3.5 minutes to try and work these out. So you might like to get your mum or dad just to time you, just to see whether you can do them in the time. Don't worry if you can't, but just give it a go and see whether you can do them within the time. So looking at number 1, the reason that it is C, we're just talking about why it's the odd one out, it's because all the other 4 shapes all have straight sides. So that has a curved side. So that's the reason that that one is the answer. Number 2 is D. And the reason it's D is because the other 4 all have a curly line crossing the straight line. You can see this curly, squiggly line, whereas this one, of course, is straight. Question 3, all the other 4 have a smaller shape inside a bigger shape. So the answer to number 3 is D. And if you see here, look, they've all got a little shape inside, whereas the circle doesn't have any shape inside. Question 4, have a look very carefully at this one. And the answer is B. And the reason that it is B is the other 4 all have lines that stop on the edge of the shape. So you can just make out, and this is where sometimes the difference is a little bit subtle, quite small little differences. But we can see here B, the line comes out and it comes out of the shape. Question 5, we've got E. And why is it E? Because the other 4 are actually 6-sided shapes. Now I always think with these it's certainly worth, certainly on an arrow like this, actually putting a line on there. So you've got 3, 4, 5, 6, just so you don't count that edge again. So, and you could even just quickly, certainly on that one you'd know straight away, but on these ones where you're counting them up, it's worth just putting the number above just so you can see if they have any similarities. And of course with this one, it's the same as the first shape, so you know that that's 6. And then this one, as it's a pentagon, only has 5. Question 6, the answer is A. And the reason it's A is the other 4 all have 1 white shape, 2 black shapes and 3 grey shapes. A is the odd one out because it's the only one to have 1 black shape, 2 white shapes and 3 grey shapes. So I think first of all, just looking very carefully at the white shape, there's only 1 there, whereas of course you've got 2 here. So that's what I might have focused on first of all. Well done if you got all 6 of those correct and you were able to do them in 3.5 minutes. Let's go and have a look now at the next set of odd ones out, and these are on page 14 to 15. We're going to see why the answers are, so we've got C on that first one, then we've got C again, so well done if you're getting these correct, and then on question 3 we've actually got D as the right answer there. So let's have a look at number 1 first of all. Now, the other 4 have lines that cross at 2 places. So you can see the 2 places. I'm going to just put a little dot on where they actually cross over each other. But you might have noticed on C, they only cross the once. Question 2, the other 4 all have a white star in the centre, whereas there's a black star in the centre of that one. So that's fairly simple. So there's sometimes what we would describe as a distraction or distractors. And that means that there's something in the actual figures that it's drawn, but trying to get you to look at, but it's irrelevant. And we mean certainly the shading here on the outside is not going to help, because on A, B and D, that's all got the same dotted outline, but that's no good because that's only 3 shapes. Remember, we're just trying to find 4 that go together to leave us with the odd one out. So guys, do look out for distractors. Question 3, the answer is D. And the reason that it's D is the other 4 all have an arrow pointing up. So we've got an arrow upwards, upwards, upwards and upwards, but not on D. Got one pointing off to the left and one pointing down. Question 4, the answer is B. And the reason it's B is because all the other 4 have a total of 8 sides. So if I count them up, 8 sides, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then this one, you have to be quite clever with this one when you're counting them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just be careful when you're counting up those smaller sides. So the answer was B, because this one's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Having a look at A, B, C and D and E on question 5, which is the odd one out here. Well, the answer to this one is D. And the reason it's D is because the other 4 have 2 small shapes that are the same shade. So we've got 2 white, 2 black, 2 white. There's only 1 of each here. And then we've got 2 white there. So the answer there was D. Question 6, the answer is A. And the reason it's A is the other 4 have a circle and an arrowhead at either end of the line. So sometimes looking at the end of the lines, look, you'll see the arrowhead and the circle appearing. But on A, we've actually got 2 circles at the end of that jointed line. So, well done. If you managed to get 6 out of 6 again on that one. Let's go and have a look at the next set. And these are on page, we're looking now at page 14 and 15. So this is page 15 that we need to be looking at. And let's see if we can work out why these are the odd ones out. So again, time yourself. Hopefully you timed yourself for 3.5 minutes. And you can work down through afterwards. Once you've done all 6, you can come back, watch the video and see what your answers were. So we've got 1E, and the reason being the other 4 arrows are all pointing anti-clockwise. Anti-clockwise. And I sometimes put AC, just so I know what direction they're going in. And then this one, of course, is going clockwise, so I know that's the odd one out. So knowing your anti-clockwise and your clockwise is quite important. So if I was doing this arrow going that way around, that of course is clockwise. And of course when we go this way, we're going anti-clockwise. Let's have a look at question 2. And the answer to this one is A. And the other 4 pictures have shapes that are reflected along a mirrored line. So if I grabbed a mirror line for you, let's grab this one. We were to draw it in. So if I come down through the middle here, so it's quite thick, this pen, but I think you can still see. Oh, it wasn't very straight. Let me try that again. So we're talking about coming down through a nice straight line through the vertical. And this one again, if we come down through the middle, we should have done a slightly thinner pen, but you can see that these are the same on both sides. Whereas when we do it with this one, you'll notice we come down between the arrows, we've got an arrowhead at the bottom here, and we've obviously got an arrowhead here. So you can see they wouldn't be the same. So it wasn't particularly well drawn, that one, but you get the idea, hopefully, that if we were to draw a mirror line down through the middle, you would see that these are symmetrical, whereas this is not symmetrical to that. Question 3, what have we got for this one? Well, the answer to this one is actually D. And the reason it's D is because the other 4 all contain quadrilaterals. Well, there's no quadrilateral here. We've got triangle and a pentagon. Whereas in all the others, you can see we've got a square, a square, a square, and then 2 quadrilaterals actually there, trapezium and a square. So well done if you got D there. Moving on to question 4, the answer is B. And the reason that it's B is because the other 4 all have a square, then a circle, then a square, then a triangle going in a clockwise direction around the ring. So this is really looking at the order of those shapes. So you've got to be quite clever here and see that it goes square, circle, square, triangle. And then if we do the same over here, we've got circle, square, triangle, square. And then again, circle, square, triangle, square. And then we go circle, square, triangle, square. But over here, if we go circle, triangle, square, square. So very subtle difference, but hopefully again you're able to see the order there. Number 5, and we have actually seen this shape before in a previous question, and you might recognise that as being symmetrical. So the answer is C, because all the others do not have a line of symmetry. Question 6, the answer to this one is D. And the reason that all the other 4 go together is because all the other 4 all have 3 black spots and 4 white spots. So again, all about counting up. So you might have first of all done the black ones, 3, 3, and 3. And you might have noticed then that this one had 4, so that would have given you the answer. But if that hadn't, you could have double checked the white ones. So there's 4 there, 4 there, 4 there. There's only 3 here, and then we've got 4 here. Now, what's really important is that you write and you keep to the same side. So I did the black ones first as the first number, and then the second number, I actually made that, put a comma in between, I actually made that the white ones. Now, if I hadn't done that, I would have ended up getting 3 and 4, and then I wouldn't have been able to work out the difference. So just be a little bit careful. Well done on those. We're now going to move on, I think, to the last section of odd ones out. And we're going to go and have a look at page 16 now for the odd ones out questions. So let's go and have a look at those. And we'll be able to work out, hopefully, what the answers are. So number 1, the answer is E. And the reason it's E, I'm going to actually choose a slightly different colour here to show you. The other 4 all have the arrows within the squares facing in the same direction. The arrows within the squares are all going the same way. So all going up, all going down, all going towards the left, all going towards the right. But you'll notice here, I've got this arrow going that way, but then this arrow is going that way. So they're going in a slightly different direction. Question 2, the answer is A. And the reason it's A is because all the other 4 all have the smaller shape overlapping the edge of the bigger shape. Whereas with this one, it's overlapping, but it's not overlapping the edge. So that's the crucial thing there. Question 3, the answer is C, and the reason it's C is because the other 4 all have 2 arrow lines in front of the triangle and 1 arrow line behind. And that's the tricky thing here. You can see that all these arrows are on top of the triangle, but we need to have, like this arrow here is, like that arrow is, sneakily hiding behind the triangle. So well done if you got C right there. I hope as you're going down through, you're giving them a tick and you're understanding the answers. Question 4, the answer is D. And the reason it's D is because the other 4 all have 3 shapes outside the cross. Sorry, that's not quite right. All the other 4 all have shapes with a thick black edge within the oval. So, sorry, this thick black edge, I wasn't looking at the right question. Here we go. All got a thick black edge inside the shape, whereas this one doesn't. So the answer is D. Question 5, this is the one where the other 4 all have 3 shapes outside the cross. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. That makes that the answer, 1, 2, 3. So sometimes it's worth ignoring parts of the shape and focusing on other elements. Question 6. We've got the other 4 all have lines that cross in 3 places. So B is the odd one out as it only has one that has lines that cross in 4 places. So that's the answer to number 6. So that's the end of the odd one out questions. And now let's go and have a look at your puzzle sheets. So these puzzle sheets are in the Bond non-verbal puzzle sheets. And what we've got here is you've got a couple of puzzles that we'd love you to have a go at. These are called Pete's Odds and Ends shops. So with this one, you've got to try and find the one that is different, I think, from the rest. So that hopefully will be a fun puzzle for you to have a go at. And then we've got the case of the pineapple thief, which you might like to have a go at as well. And then we've also got spot the difference as well, which is always good fun to have a go at doing. So we've got 3 different puzzles that you might like to have a go at here. So just going back again to the first one on Pete's Odds and Ends shop. If you do want to know what the answers are, then we'll just pick these out very quickly. So the odd one out here was that one. So just read what we've got to do. Few mistakes putting in the boxes. Each box should only contain similar odds and ends. Look at the boxes on it. Can you spot the one thing in each box which is different? So yeah, that one's different. And we've also got this one here that is different from the rest. And then looking carefully, we've got this one that is different. And then we've got this one that is different as well. So hopefully you found those 4. And then we've got the prints. Now detective, we've got a detective. What's he got to do? He's got to find, I think, one that is different from the rest. So the odd one thing must be the thieves. We've got to find the one that's different. So I'll show you which one it is. Hopefully you're able to spot that and see that one is slightly different. It's probably easier in your book or in your sheets to actually see this and be able to pick it out. And then we've got spot the difference, and there are lots of differences here. Let me circle some of them. So we've got the writing of dog on the hat. We've got the picture here, the 2 cats, they're kind of the other way round. We've got the clock here, which is showing a different time. We've got pizzas here. There's not the same amount of pizza slices. We've got a cup here which is not shaded correctly or not full, not got anything in it. I think it's empty. We've got dog's tail pointing down there rather than pointing up. Obviously circle the same picture might make it easier. And then we've got the collar as well. I think I'm right in saying there were 8 differences altogether. Can you spot the 8 differences? There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So well done, guys, if you managed to do those. Would ask you please to learn week 2's spellings. Those are more plurals to learn, but for words ending in Y, F and different vowels. So please do have a go at those for us. And then homework-wise, you're then on to look at week 2's. And you're going to be focusing on odd one out, but in your rapid Schofield and Sims test 4 book for 9 and 10 years. So please do those. And there'll be a review video that will go through, of course, all of those answers for you. If you get a chance to do the You Could, that would be amazing. There's also some numeracy to do, some maths questions that you might like to have a go at as well. Don't think there's that many questions in the You Must. So if you can do the You Could, that would be lovely. Guys, thank you very much for watching this video. Hope you found it useful, and we look forward to seeing you in your next live lesson back with us. But I hope you found this useful just in case you're not able to join us. Take care of yourselves. Bye.